Welcome back, growers. In part 3 of this garden planning series, I'm going to show you how we take the numbers that our production calculator gave us, make the necessary adjustments so that they fit into our growing space, and simplify them so that they fit into our standardized bed layout. This final step is critical to make our data work seamlessly in real life. So let's open up our production calculator one more time and have a look at this final phase. Alright, we're back here with our production calculator and we're going to finish this off now. I like this final phase because we get to make some decisions. But they're not random decisions. We're not like spouting off plans to grow 3 beds of beets and not even knowing why. These are informed decisions based on our huge grocery list right here and years of production data put together. So now let's talk about how we tidy up this data so it's really easy to work with when we start to put together our garden plan. Because even though these numbers are in the right range right now, I don't want to plant 0.8 beds of beans or 0.6 beds of cabbage or 0.1 bed of celery. So the first thing that I'm going to do is round all of these numbers to whole numbers. The column I get to play with now is the number of beds planted. And I'm literally going to, first of all, just run down this row and round them to the nearest whole number. We'll talk about strategies for this in a second. Bloop, and there we go. Everything's magically filled in. That was easy. But let's talk about what just happened there, because at every row here I needed to make a decision about whether I was going to round something up or down, and these still need to be informed decisions. The first thing that I took into account was our bed total. This yellow cell calculates the total number of beds planted all the time. So that's the total that we've got right now. 66.75 beds are accounted for in this plan, and I know that I've got 58 available. Now, to a beginner gardener, this maybe would be a red flag because you wouldn't want to plan to grow more beds than what you have available. But I know with the use of relay planting, that is growing multiple crops in the same bed at different times in the season, that we can comfortably fit 25 to 30% more beds in our garden plan than what we actually have. So am I concerned about having 66 beds in my plan when I only have 58 available? Not at all. That's comfortably within our range. Aside from that factor, when I look at each crop, I'm going to ask myself, is this easy to store or is this difficult to store? Have we had too much of this crop in the past and been struggling to use it up, or have we wanted more of this during the wintertime when we didn't have access to any? So I take our past experiences into account and the storability of a crop into account and round as follows. So for example here, when my spreadsheet tells me I should have at least 1.6 beds, I can comfortably round that up to 2 because dried beans have an incredible storage life that we can keep drawing on for a really long time without worrying about them going bad. It's easy to round that kind of crop up when I've got the space. Ideally, I end up with lots of whole numbers like this, rounding 0.9 to 1, that's easy. Rounding 0.8 to 1 down here, another easy one. Sometimes I'm generous with my portions because I'm doing a trial, like in the case of garlic here, and I know I can sell extra that I grow. And then there are all these decimal numbers, but notice that they're different than these decimal numbers on the left. These are all now in multiples of quarter beds. What I mean by that is I could divide every one of these quantities by 0.25, that is a quarter size bed, and get a whole number. So even though cabbage says 0.75, that means it's 3 smaller beds. It's not a complicated number to work with. Now in recent years, as I've been transitioning away from market gardening and focusing just on producing a homestead garden for our family, this table has revealed that we still have an abundance of space, which is wonderful, and it gives us a lot of freedom. It allows us to scale up production of some crops, but that's not necessarily what I want. I don't want to grow 4 times the amount of tomatoes that I need. That'll just waste my time in the long run because I'll have to deal with all of that produce. But this extra space has been useful to allow us to expand into crops that we eat that are economically less valuable, such as grains. So if we scroll further down here, you'll see some large bed numbers coming into play that we previously haven't had because these are all grains that we'll be growing now for our own consumption. This is an example of how you could use up more space in your garden. If you have more than you need, you can start shifting production to crops that are less productive on a pound per square foot basis, so that you'll use all of your space to grow food for yourself still, but not overwhelm yourself with much more produce than you'll actually be able to eat. And the last thing that we'll do with this chart at the end of the season is come back here and record our total production achieved and compare that with the target production that we had set out to grow in the first place. And by following this practice year after year, this planning process becomes more and more accurate every season. So you now know the full process we use to take our guesswork out of garden planning. There it is. In part 1, We started by nailing down some solid estimates of our annual consumption for each crop. In part 2, we converted those production targets into specific bed quantities. And finally, in part 3, we made the necessary adjustments to make everything fit into our standardized garden bed layout. With consistent growing methods in play and diligent record keeping, you can plan your annual vegetable production in just the same way. With an organized process like this, it really is about as simple as putting together a grocery list. Just remember that you only get to do this once per year though, so it pays to do it right. Now pull out some paper or open up a new spreadsheet and get to work on that annual grocery list of yours. And if you need a little extra motivation to take your planning seriously, one reward that's waiting for you on the other side is that when you grow your own food with accuracy, you actually don't have to make grocery lists anymore because the only thing you need is toilet paper and toothpaste. That's easy to remember. If you'd like to accelerate your progress, this production calculator and all of its formulas and proven yield ratios are waiting for you inside the Seed to Table course, along with much more thorough instruction and support for your journey. That's all for this one. Happy planning!